I went to a party my husband forced me to attend. He left me for another, richer woman. She looked me up and down, threw a dollar bill at my feet, and told me to buy something practical. What she didn't know? That dollar was the biggest mistake of her life, because I was the one who signed her paychecks. I took my husband to a gala. He left with another woman because she's powerful. She handed me a dollar bill and said, "I'll take good care of him tonight." The next day, my cheating husband found out his key no longer fit the door, and his affair partner called him screaming, "You didn't tell me your wife is." My name is Elena Rios, and I'm 46 years old. I live a life that looks gritty on paper but feels profoundly satisfying when you're in it. I own Rios Design Studio, an Austin-based company that specializes in turning cold, impersonal metal into massive, beautiful art installations that make architects weep with joy. We're not talking about the flimsy, mass-produced lawn art you buy from a catalog. I forge steel, copper, and glass. I bend I-beams and TIG-weld stainless steel into flowing sculptures that become the soul of corporate lobbies and university campuses. I build the kind of art that could double as a fortress. Monuments to persistence for people who understand that beauty isn't delicate. It's strong as hell. I've got permanent metal dust etched into the lines of my palms and under my nails that no amount of that fancy pumice soap can fully remove. I've stopped trying. It's a badge of honor. Proof that I actually make things for a living instead of just attending meetings about making things. I've got a mortgage on my studio that I paid off 5 years early, which apparently makes me some kind of anomaly in this economy. I've got 4 kids. Leo, 18, who's smart enough to head to trade school in the fall to study specialized welding, knowing a philosophy degree won't pay the bills. The twins, Sophia and Mateo, just turned 15. Sophia wants to be an aerospace engineer, and Mateo is currently convinced he'll be a crypto millionaire by 20. And then there's Luna, my 2-year-old, who still thinks my plasma cutter is a magic wand, and I'm dreading the day she figures out I'm just a woman who's really good at math and melting steel. And up until about a week ago, I genuinely thought I had a stable marriage. Or at least, the kind of marriage that looked good enough in the holiday photos that nobody asked uncomfortable questions at neighborhood barbecues. My husband, Martin. Well, I guess I should start practicing saying my soon-to-be ex-husband. Martin is handsome in that sharp, tailored, expensive way that venture capitalists cultivate. He radiates an ambition that could power a small city. A restless energy that always seems to be looking for the next big thing. He's a partner at a downtown VC firm, doing something with disruptive tech and synergistic scaling that I never fully understood, despite him explaining it to me approximately 700 times. The man could talk a nervous startup founder out of their own equity and have them thanking him for the privilege. I thought we made sense together. The fire and the ice. I handled the forge and the fire, the tangible things you could touch and feel and see. He handled the funding and the futures, the abstract concepts on spreadsheets that made my teeth itch. I built things that would outlast us. Things with weight and permanence. In a studio that smelled of ozone and grinding wheels. He built portfolios in a high-rise office that smelled like expensive carpet and pressurized air. I figured we balanced each other out. The artisan who kept things grounded and the lawyer who kept us aiming high. I was the substance, he was the style. Together we were supposed to be unstoppable. My studio is my church. A 2,000 square foot converted warehouse in East Austin, filled with welding equipment, sheets of raw metal, and half-finished commissions. The concrete floor is a map of scorch marks and chemical patinas from decades of work. There's a radio in the corner that only plays classic rock and Texas blues because I'm not subjecting my power tools to minimalist electronica. I have a workbench that's older than Leo, covered in tools I've collected over 25 years of giving a damn about craftsmanship. For the first few years of our marriage, I went to his mixers. I'd suffer through small talk with men in suits, whose idea of hard work was a difficult spreadsheet formula. I'd stand there, my hands unconsciously checking for grease, while they asked me what I did as a hobby. But somewhere around year 10, I became his plus none. He stopped inviting me to the holiday parties, the investor dinners. He said I didn't mesh with the partners, that my jokes were too blunt, that I made his colleagues uncomfortable because I asked them what they actually built besides PowerPoint presentations. So, I stayed home. I worked on my business, I coached Luna's soccer team, and I convinced myself that his embarrassment of me was somehow normal, until last Tuesday night. He walked into my studio, looking distinctly uncomfortable in his tailored suit, amidst the sparks and steel. I was finishing a 12-foot sculpture for a bank lobby, sweat dripping down my back, my welding helmet pushed up. "Elena," he said, "you have to come to the Azure Tower Gala this year." Not, "I'd like you to," or, "I want you there." He said, "Have to." Like I was a prop he needed. It was bizarre, because for the last 5 years, I'd been specifically uninvited. And when your husband suddenly wants you at the party he spent half a decade keeping you away from, well, that's not an invitation. That's a subpoena. I should have known right then that something was already burning down, and it wasn't just my forge. The event was held at the Azure Tower Gala, the kind of establishment where the air itself feels filtered and expensive. You hand your keys to a valet who looks like he models for Armani, and the doorman greets you like you're royalty. Not like you've forgotten how handles work just because you're wearing heels. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and glass, dripping with the kind of wealth that makes you want to check your bank account, just to make sure it hasn't self-destructed out of shame. There was a chandelier hanging from the 3-story ceiling that looked like a frozen explosion of diamonds, probably costing more than my first plasma cutter. I wore my best suit, not a dress, but a sharply tailored sapphire blue pantsuit I'd bought for an awards ceremony 2 years ago. My shoes were polished, my hair was up, and I'd even managed to scrub most of the patina stains off my hands. I was presentable, damn it. Even if I felt like a functional tool someone had accidentally placed among a collection of fragile glass ornaments. Martin, on the other hand, wore a custom tux that fit him like a second skin. He looked perfect, like he was carved from polished obsidian, and he moved through the room with an ease that I had always envied. He'd spent an hour getting ready, adjusting cufflinks, making sure his hair was perfect, while I'd taken 20 minutes and was ready to go. The ballroom was packed with Martin's colleagues, all dressed like they were attending the Oscars instead of a corporate gala in Austin. There was an open bar serving whiskey that was older than my oldest son, and waiters glided around with trays of tiny, complicated food that looked more like architectural models than something you were supposed to eat. I grabbed a drink, some kind of bourbon that tasted like it cost more per ounce than silver, and tried my best not to make eye contact with anyone who might want to discuss portfolio optimization. Martin immediately transformed into his work persona. It was like watching a switch flip. His laugh was smoother, his posture more commanding, and he touched people's arms more often. He used phrases like next quarter leverage and strategic scaling without a trace of irony. I stood next to him like a piece of his entourage, smiling politely while he introduced me. "This is my wife, Elena," he'd say with the same enthusiasm you'd use to introduce your accountant. "She runs a design studio, sculptures, that kind of thing." And then he'd quickly pivot the conversation back to funding rounds, steering it away from me before anyone could ask follow-up questions about welding temperatures or the tensile strength of steel. I was nursing my second drink, and seriously contemplating how quickly I could fake a migraine when she appeared. Dr. Isabel Vance. She didn't just walk into the room. She materialized out of the crowd like a villain in a movie who knows the camera is on her. She was everything I wasn't. Sleek, impossibly thin, with platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe, elegant bun that must have taken hours. She wore a white pantsuit that was so sharp it could have cut glass, and she had the kind of sharp, intelligent beauty that comes from boardrooms and high-stakes decisions. She had that particular brand of confidence that only comes from never having to worry about money, or grease, or anything real. Martin's entire face changed when he saw her. I'm talking a complete transformation. He lit up, brighter than our Christmas tree, his eyes sparkling in a way they definitely hadn't sparkled when looking at me in recent memory. They had that instant, comfortable familiarity that made my stomach feel like it was full of cold metal shavings. They immediately fell into an intense, private bubble, laughing at shared jokes, their heads close together. I might as well have been a decorative plant, or perhaps one of my own sculptures, something interesting to look at. But ultimately, just part of the background. Isabel finally turned to me, her eyes scanning me from my practical heels to my, I'm sure, less than perfect hair. It was a quick, dismissive appraisal. "Oh," she said, her voice like chilled vodka. "You're the wife." She didn't offer a hand. Then she turned her attention back to Martin, complimenting his tie, his recent presentation, and some project they were collaborating on that required a lot of late nights at the office. My internal alarm system was blaring, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Then it happened. The moment that seared itself into my brain, the moment I'd replay 1,000 times. Isabel turned to me, a cool, pitying smile on her face. She reached into her impossibly small, expensive clutch, pulled out a single crisp dollar bill, and slid it across the polished table. It spun once before stopping right in front of my bourbon. George Washington stared up at me, looking profoundly embarrassed for us all. "Here," she said, her voice smooth as glass, loud enough for the colleagues at our table to hear. "Buy yourself something. Practical." She then draped her arm over the back of Martin's chair, her fingers lightly grazing his shoulder. "I'll take good care of him tonight." The table erupted. Not in outrage, but in laughter. Sharp, surprised bursts of laughter from Martin's partners and their wives, who thought it was inappropriate but hilarious. And Martin smiled. He didn't laugh, but he smiled a tight, embarrassed, complicit grin that was 1,000 times worse than any laugh. He didn't defend me. He didn't say a word. I sat there, the dollar bill sitting there, an insult so profound it was almost surreal. My mind went quiet, deadly quiet. The rational part of my brain was screaming, but the part of me that bends 500-degree steel to my will took over. I picked up the dollar bill. I folded it neatly into quarters, my hands surprisingly steady. Considering the forge of rage building in my chest, I looked directly into Isabel's cold, intelligent eyes. "Thank you," I said, my voice dangerously calm and clear, silencing the remaining chuckles. "This will just about cover the co-pay for your inevitable therapy." The laughter choked and died. Isabel's smile faltered. Martin's face went white. I could feel every eye in our section locked on me. I stood up, smoothing my pantsuit with a deliberate calm that felt more threatening than any scream. I walked out of that ballroom, my heels clicking on the marble floor, and I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard Martin call my name. "Elena!" But his voice sounded distant and unimportant, like a radio station fading out. I handed my valet ticket to the kid at the front, tipped him $20, and sat in my truck. The dollar bill was still clutched in my hand, and it felt heavy as iron. I didn't drive home. I drove to the studio. That dollar bill was crumpled in my fist, a physical anchor in the storm of silent white-hot rage that was consuming me. I sat in my truck for a solid 5 minutes, the rumble of the engine the only sound, before I trusted myself to walk. I keyed in the code to my workshop, and the familiar scent of ozone, hot metal, and motor oil hit me. It was 3 a.m. My sanctuary. Martin didn't come home that night. I knew this because I stayed awake, not watching the driveway like a victim, but working. I put on my leathers, snapped down my auto-darkening helmet, and fired up the TIG welder. I grabbed a piece of scrap 1/4-inch steel and just started laying beads, watching the tiny, perfect molten pool of steel form under the arc. The shower of sparks, the smell of hot tungsten, the intense focus required. It's the only therapy that ever worked for me. You can't destroy something while you're focused on creating something, but every fiber of my being wanted to destroy. My phone sat on the workbench, stubbornly silent. No calls, no texts. I tried calling him twice around 2 a.m., just to be sure. Both times, it went straight to his polished, professional voicemail. I left one message, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Where are you?" I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I didn't give him ammunition to later claim I was being controlling or paranoid. Just 3 words. Calm, reasonable, and utterly dead. The workshop was cold. December in Austin doesn't mess around, but I kept working. My hands knew what to do even when my brain was stuck in a loop, replaying the gala, the way Martin smiled when she insulted me, the casual cruelty of that dollar bill, the fact that he hadn't said a single word. Not one. I thought about calling my sister. But what would I say? My husband, the VC partner, just let another woman pay me off with $1? Pride is a funny thing. It'll make you weld at 4 a.m. in a pantsuit rather than admit you're drowning. Around 4:30 a.m., my phone buzzed on the workbench. My heart leaped, thinking it was him. It wasn't. It was a notification from my bank app about a transaction on our joint credit card. I checked it out of habit and felt the blood drain from my face. Replaced by an icy calm. A charge from the Azure Tower Hotel. At 2:17 a.m. The charge was $487. Not the gala bar tab. This was a room. A suite. Apparently when you're cheating on your wife, you do it in luxury. And you're stupid enough to use the joint card. I took a screenshot, saved it to 3 different folders, and emailed it to myself. Documentation. Divorce court loves documentation. At dawn. Just as the sky was turning that bruised purple-gray, I heard his car. The distinctive, near-silent purr of his white Tesla pulling into our driveway. I stayed in the workshop, forcing myself to clean my welding station, organizing tools that were already organized, because I didn't trust what I might say or do if I met him at the door. I watched through the studio window as he fumbled with his keys and slipped inside the house. I waited 10 minutes, letting him think I was asleep, letting him think he'd gotten away with it. Then I walked across the cold yard, still wearing my welding gloves like armor, and went inside through the back door. He was standing by the coffee maker, wearing yesterday's wrinkled tuxedo pants and dress shirt. His bow tie was gone, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looked wrecked, but not in the way you look after a long night of drinking. He looked satisfied. "Elena?" he said, startled. His voice a weird, guilty squeak. "You're up early. Never went to sleep," I said. My voice was flat, like a piece of cold steel. "Where were you?" He laughed. He actually laughed. A nervous, high-pitched sound. God, that party went forever. A bunch of us went up to Isabel's suite afterward to keep networking. I must have crashed on the couch. He gestured vaguely, as if that explained everything. "It got late, you know." "Right," I said. "Networking. At 2 a.m. On a couch." Then I saw it. Just visible above the rumpled collar of his expensive shirt, right where his neck met his shoulder. A mark. Not a shaving cut. Not razor burn. It was the kind of dark, purple-red bruise that has exactly one cause and 0 innocent explanations. A hickey. A goddamn hickey. My 47-year-old husband, the venture capitalist, came home with a hickey like he was 16 and making out in his girlfriend's basement. "You've got something on your neck," I said, pointing with one gloved finger. His hand flew up to cover it. His face cycling through panic and then landing on defiance. "What?" "Oh, that. I must have nicked myself shaving yesterday. You know how sensitive my skin is." The curling iron excuse. The male equivalent. I'd been married to him for 23 years. I'd watched him shave. He used a $300 electric razor. He hadn't nicked himself. The lie was so pathetic, so insulting to my intelligence, it was worse than the mark itself. He turned away from me, busying himself with the coffee maker, measuring the beans like it was the most important task in the world. He started humming, actually humming some indie folk song I didn't recognize, making small talk about the weather, about needing to pick up his dry cleaning, about whether we should book that ski trip to Aspen. He was acting like nothing had happened. Like our marriage wasn't actively bleeding out on the expensive tile floor. I watched him pour the coffee, and something inside me just broke, not with a bang, but with a quiet, final snap. The last thread of a tension wire giving way. That's when I decided. The locks were changing. Today, Sunday morning hit me like a hangover. Except I was completely sober, which made it worse. I'd spent all of Saturday in my studio, welding on a new commission with a fury that was actually making it come out better than I'd planned. Martin had floated around the house, pretending to be confused about my silence, acting like I was the one being unreasonable. "Are you still mad about the party, Elena? You know how those things are." He'd gone to bed in the guest room without me asking, which told me everything I needed to know about his guilty conscience. Cheaters always tell on themselves. I was up at 6 a.m. I made coffee strong enough to strip paint and headed straight to Home Depot, before the weekend DIY warriors could clog the aisles. There's something deeply grounding about a hardware store. Marriage falling apart? There's a product for that. Husband cheating? Aisle 7. Next to the deadbolts and your dignity. I walked through those automatic doors on a mission. To buy locks so strong they could keep out the apocalypse, zombies, and cheating spouses. In that order. The lock aisle was a study in paranoia. Smart locks, keypad locks, locks that probably required a retinal scan. I went old school. Schlage, grade 1 security rating, the heaviest duty deadbolts they made, in a brushed nickel finish. The kind of locks that locksmiths respect and burglars cry about. I bought 4 of them, one for every exterior door. The cashier was a young woman with purple hair, a name tag that said Brenda, and a facial expression that said she'd rather be anywhere else. She scanned my locks. Big home improvement project? She asked, bored. Something like that, I said. More like a home security upgrade. Keeping the wrong people out. Brenda nodded. A flicker of understanding in her eyes. I feel that. My ex kept forgetting which apartment was his after we broke up. Had to change my locks twice. Some people just lose their privileges, I said. She smirked, gave me a small nod, and I headed home with a grim determination. Martin's white Tesla was still in the driveway. He was probably sleeping off his networking. Good. I grabbed my toolbox. Installing new locks is oddly satisfying when you're angry. For me, it was child's play. I'm a metal fabricator. A simple lock set is a 5-minute job. There was something cathartic about unscrewing the old hardware, the mechanisms that used to let him in, and replacing them with shiny, solid new barriers. Keys he didn't have. Keys he would never get. Leo wandered out around 9 a.m., rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He watched me work on the back door for a minute, scratching his stomach. Mom, why are you changing all the locks? Security upgrade, I said, not looking up from the screwdriver. Making sure only the people who live here can get in. He was quiet for a second. Leo is smart. He's seen the tension. Does Dad know about this security upgrade? He's about to find out. A slow grin spread across his face. That's cold, Mom. He said it with respect. Want some help? We worked together on the last 2 doors. It was nice, standing side by side with my son, not having to explain myself. He understood. When we finished, I handed him a new key. This is yours. Do not give it to your father, under any circumstances. I'll give keys to the twins and Luna when they get home. Got it, he said, tucking it securely in his pocket. Martin finally emerged around 10:30 a.m., dressed in expensive golf attire, looking refreshed. He tried to make small talk about dinner plans. I just grunted. Whatever you want, knowing damn well dinner plans were about to be the least of his concerns. He left for his tea time, completely oblivious. At 6:30 p.m. on the dot, I heard the Tesla pull into the drive. I was in the living room, pretending to read a metallurgy journal, waiting. Leo was upstairs in his room, door cracked, definitely listening. I heard Martin's footsteps on the porch. Heard the jingle of his keys. Heard the familiar sound of his key sliding into a lock that no longer recognized his authority. Silence. Then another attempt, harder this time. More silence. Then the sound of him trying different keys, probably the house key, the deadbolt key, getting more frantic. Elena! He yelled through the door, annoyance in his voice. Elena! The key isn't working. I let him yell my name 3 more times before I casually walked over and opened the door, standing in the frame, blocking his entry. He was standing there, his face red with frustration. The key isn't working, he said, stating the obvious. Yeah, I said, leaning against the doorframe. Neither is our marriage. His jaw dropped. What, Elena? That's not funny. Let me in so we can have an adult conversation. An adult conversation? I repeated, tasting the words. Is that what you call spending Friday night in a hotel and coming home with another woman's mark on your neck? That's real mature behavior, Martin, very adult. That's not what happened. You're twisting everything. His voice was climbing, getting that sharp, lawyerly tone he used when he was losing an argument. Go talk to Isabel, I interrupted, my voice cold as steel. The woman who thinks I'm worth $1. The woman who left her signature on your neck. I'm sure she'd love to have an adult conversation with you. That's when the neighbors started appearing. Old Mrs. Henderson from next door suddenly needed to water her xeriscape garden, despite it being dark. The tech bros across the street discovered an urgent need to check their mailbox for the third time that day. Martin noticed the audience. Elena, this is my house too. You can't just lock me out. He actually tried to push past me, like he could just shoulder me aside. I didn't budge an inch. I've spent 25 years bracing 500-pound sculptures. He bounced off me like I was one of my own installations. Actually, I said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, I can. And I did. Maybe crash on Isabel's couch tonight. I hear you're familiar with her furniture. His face went from red to white. Utterly defeated by the public humiliation and my refusal to break, he stormed back to his Tesla, gunned the electric motor, and sped out of the neighborhood. I waved to Mrs. Henderson, went inside, and locked my new deadbolt. It made a very satisfying click. The house felt different after Martin left. It was like someone had finally opened a window in a room that had been suffocating for months. I sat on the couch in the living room, my metallurgy journal forgotten in my lap, listening to the silence, and I realized, with a chilling clarity, that I didn't miss his presence. That peace sounded better than his voice. That's probably the saddest realization a married person can have. The quiet felt like freedom, with a slight aftertaste of impending legal bills. But I'd take it. Leo came downstairs about an hour later, after the neighborhood watch had retreated, and the street returned to its normal suburban quiet. He grabbed a Coke from the fridge, sat down in the recliner that used to be his grandfather's, and just looked at me for a solid minute, scanning me for damage. So, he finally said, popping the tab. Mom. He called me. I bet he did, I said, my voice still flat. Let me guess. I'm being unreasonable, dramatic, refusing to communicate like an adult? He said you're overreacting, Leo reported, his tone flat, just stating facts. That you changed the locks without warning and embarrassed him in front of the neighbors. That you're making a big deal out of nothing. Nothing? I repeated, feeling that cold forge in my chest heat up again. Did he mention the nothing he was doing in a hotel room at 2 a.m.? The nothing that left a mark on his neck? The nothing that involved another woman throwing $1 at me? Leo held up his hand. Mom, I'm just telling you what he said. I'm not saying I believe him. He took a long drink, navigating the conversation. He wants me to talk to you. Convince you to let him back in so you guys can work through this. And what did you tell him? I told him I'd talk to you, Leo said. And then a slow grin spread across his face. My grin? I didn't say I'd try very hard. I laughed, a real, rusty laugh. You're a good kid, Leo. I'm 18, Mom. I'm not a kid. And I'm old enough to know when someone's full of it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I've seen how he's been treating you for years. Like you're some embarrassing accessory. Like making things isn't a real job. Not like his important job. Like you're not successful enough for his image. It's been gross to watch. That hit me harder than the dollar bill. I thought I'd been hiding it. Shielding them. You noticed that, huh? We all noticed, Leo said, his voice quiet. Even Luna asked me last year why Dad never wants to talk about your studio when his friends are over. Sophia and Mateo have a running theory he's been having an affair for 6 months. I told them they watched too much Netflix. But, he gestured vaguely at the locked front door. Guess they were on to something. 6 months. The late nights at the office. The investor trips that seemed longer than necessary. The way he'd started dressing even nicer. That new obsession with his appearance. All the clichés I'd ignored because acknowledging them meant admitting my marriage was a lie. So, Leo asked, what now? Are you kicking him out for good? I don't know yet, I admitted. But, probably. Before I could finish, my phone buzzed. A new email. The subject line read, Letter of Intent regarding marital separation, Martin Rios. It was from a law firm I'd never heard of. He hadn't just called Leo, he'd called his lawyer, on a Sunday night. That was fast, I muttered. Leo raised an eyebrow. Lawyer? Looks like it. I opened the attached PDF. My hands were shaking, which pissed me off. The letter was 3 pages of dense legal jargon that basically boiled down to, Martin wanted money. He wanted it now. And he wanted a lot of it. He was demanding spousal support, claiming his high-stress career was what enabled my artistic hobby. And then, the part that made my blood boil, he wanted half of my business, half of Rios Design Studio. The company I built from nothing, with my own hands, in a rented garage with borrowed tools. The business he'd spent a decade calling blue-collar, not sophisticated. Just welding. That business. He wanted half. I read the letter 3 times. Then I picked up my phone and called Julia Stone. Julia had been my attorney for years. She handled my business contracts, my LLC filings, and once got me out of a zoning dispute with the city that nearly shut me down. She was expensive, ruthless, and enjoyed a good fight. Julia? I said when she picked up. It's Elena. Business is fine. Marriage is dead. Need your help killing it officially. There was a pause, then Julia's sharp voice. Finally. I was wondering when you'd call. My cousin saw Martin at a wine bar 2 weeks ago with Dr. Vance. Figured it was only a matter of time. Get in here tomorrow. 9 a.m. And Elena? Yeah? Bring every financial document you have. Everything. Julia Stone's office was on the 30th floor of a downtown high-rise. All glass and steel, a different kind of fabrication than mine. Her suite was minimalist and sharp, with leather chairs and abstract art that I actually respected. I showed up at 8:50 a.m. with a banker's box full of my financial life. Bank statements, business records, tax returns, credit card bills, and the damn letter from Martin's lawyer. Julia, sharp as ever in a gray suit, wasn't alone. Elena Rios. Meet David Chen, she said, gesturing to a man in his 30s who looked like he could find a rounding error in the federal budget. He wore rectangular glasses and had the kind of intense, focused expression that suggested he'd seen every financial crime imaginable. David is a forensic accountant. The best. He's going to find out where the money went. David shook my hand. Miss Rios. I'm sorry for the circumstances, but I'm very good at finding where money goes when people think nobody's looking. Call me Elena. And I appreciate that because I have a feeling Martin's been creative with our finances. We sat at a massive conference table. David's eyes lit up as I unpacked my box, like a kid on Christmas morning. Okay, Julia started, opening a legal pad. Community property state. Married 23 years. 4 kids. He's claiming he needs spousal support and half your business. What are we looking at, total? I ran through the numbers. The house, my business, which brought in close to $400K a year in profit, retirement accounts, savings. David's fingers flew across his laptop. And he's claiming what grounds? Julia asked. Irreconcilable differences, according to his lawyer, which is code for I got caught cheating. Right. Julia said. Here's the plan. David is going to audit every joint account, every credit card, every transfer for the last 2 years. We need to know if he's been hiding money, spending inappropriately, anything. How long does that take? For someone good, a week, David said, not looking up. For me, 3 days. Cheating spouses are lazy. They offend my sense of order. Julia, I said. I have something. The credit card charge from Friday. $487 at the Azure Tower Hotel. David's fingers stopped. He looked up. What card? Our joint Amex. I said. The one linked to the business account for legitimate expenses. David's eyes narrowed. Your business account? He's been using your business funds for personal expenses? He has authorization on the card, I admitted. For client entertainment. His job involves schmoozing investors. Seemed logical at the time. Oh, this is good, David said, sounding genuinely excited. I love it when they forget business accounts have different rules. Misuse of funds, potential tax implications. He had me log into my business banking portal right there. His eyes lit up as he started pulling statements. After about 20 minutes of furious, silent clicking, he looked up, a grim smile on his face. Elena, when was the last time you really reviewed this Amex statement? I look at the totals, I said. Why? Because your husband has been very, very busy. He turned his laptop around. It was a spreadsheet. In the last 6 months alone, he's charged over $50,000 to your business account. Hotels, restaurants I've never heard of, spa days, a charge here for $1,200 from a high-end lingerie boutique. Is that a legitimate business expense for you? My stomach dropped. $50? Dead serious. The Azure Tower Hotel appears 11 times in the last 4 months, always on Friday or Saturday nights. That's not business, Elena. That's an affair. He scrolled. Here's $2,000 at a jewelry store. Multiple charges at liquor stores, wine shops. Can we use this? I asked Julia, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and vindication. Oh, we are going to destroy him with this, Julia said, grinning. This guts his claim for spousal support. You can't claim you need money when you're busy embezzling $50K. David kept digging. He's been transferring money too. Regular transfers from your joint savings to another account. $2,000 here. $1,500 there. Always to the same place. He pulled up the transfer details. Account holder is listed as Vanguard Industrial Design, LLC. Vanguard? I repeated. What's that? Registered in Texas 6 months ago, David said, his fingers flying. Principal owner, Dr. Isabel Vance. Business purpose, strategic consulting services. Isabel Vance, I said, the name tasting like ash. She's been funding her consulting with our money. Allegedly, Julia said, but she was smiling. We sat there, letting it sink in. Martin hadn't just cheated. He'd been systematically looting our finances to fund his affair, using my business account as his personal piggy bank. The audacity was breathtaking. Then Julia looked at me. Elena, I need to ask you something. This Isabel Vance, where does she work? Some tech incubator, I think. Martin mentioned it. Vanguard something. Why? Julia's grin got even wider. What's the full name of your business? The legal entity name? Rio's Design Studio, LLC. Why? No. Julia pressed. Don't you have a subsidiary? The one you bought a few years ago? The small industrial design firm? Oh, yeah, Vanguard Industrial Design. I bought them out 3 years ago to handle smaller, more commercial projects. Fire pits, high-end patio furniture, different market. I kept the name, kept the staff. It just runs itself. It's profitable. Why are you? I stopped. My blood ran cold. No. No way. Oh, yes way, Julia said. David, pull up the corporate registration for Vanguard Industrial Design. He typed, clicked. Parent company, Ria's Design Studio, LLC. Owner. Holy. I whispered. I need to see the payroll. Pull up Vanguard's payroll. David navigated to my business accounting software, accessed the subsidiary's records, and there it was. In black and white, Vance Isabel, Dr. Chief Strategy Officer, Vanguard Industrial Design, salary, $110,000, year. The woman who threw $1 at her boss. The woman who had been sleeping with my husband, using my own money to fund her shell company, smirking at me like I was beneath her. That woman cashed a paycheck with my name on it. My laughter started as a low chuckle, built into a roar, and ended with me wiping tears from my eyes. Julia and David just watched me, smiling. This is beautiful, I finally managed to say. This is going to be so goddamn beautiful. Elena, my friend, Julia said, already making notes. We're not just winning this divorce, we're going to make legal history. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp, bright Texas sunshine that makes everything look clean and hopeful, which felt wildly inappropriate given that I was about to professionally incinerate a woman's career. I drove to the Vanguard Industrial Design offices, a sleek, modern building in a different part of Austin that I rarely visited. I preferred the grime and fire of my own studio. I trusted my management team at Vanguard to run the day-to-day. Which, I now realized, had been a catastrophic mistake. I arrived at 9 a.m., early enough to catch everyone. My general manager there, a sharp woman named Maria, met me in the lobby. She'd been with the company since before I bought it, and was one of the few people who bridged both my worlds. "Elena," she said, surprised, already holding out a coffee. "This is unexpected. Everything okay at the studio?" "Everything's fine, Maria. But I need you to schedule a mandatory meeting for all division heads. Today, 10 a.m. sharp. Conference room A." I took the coffee. "Make it sound strategic. Q4 review and organizational restructuring." Maria's eyes narrowed. She had been with me for 12 years, first as my assistant, now as this subsidiary's COO. She knew my moods. "You've got the look, boss." "What look is that, Maria?" "The look that says someone's about to be turned into one of your sculptures. And not in a good way. Just get them in the room, Maria. Especially Dr. Vance from Strategy." "Getting messy, are we?" she muttered, but she nodded. Consider it done. By 9:45, I was in conference room A, a glass box overlooking the city. I set up camp at the head of the massive mahogany table. I had the dollar bill from the gala in my pocket. I had David Chen's preliminary report in a thin black folder. I waited. The division heads started filtering in around 9:55. Susan from operations, Michael from finance, Paul from HR. They all looked vaguely concerned, which was the appropriate response to a surprise mandatory meeting called by the owner they never saw. At 10:01, Dr. Isabel Vance walked in. She was the picture of corporate perfection in a cream-colored suit, her platinum hair flawless, carrying a leather portfolio. She looked confident, comfortable, like a woman who thought she was untouchable. Then she saw me sitting at the head of the table. Her tan face went white. Not pale, but a sickly, chalky white. All the color drained from her, leaving her looking like old newspaper. Her eyes went wide, her mouth opening slightly, and I watched her brain try to compute what was happening. She knew exactly who I was, Elena Rios, the owner of Vanguard, her ultimate boss, and she knew exactly who I was, the artisan wife she'd thrown $1 at. The two realities collided in her expression, and the result was pure panic. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my voice calm and friendly. "Thanks for making time." Everyone sat. Isabel remained standing for a beat too long before lowering herself into a chair 3 seats down. As far from me as possible, she was trying to maintain eye contact, trying to project confidence, but I could see her hands shaking as she opened her portfolio. "Good morning, Dr. Vance," I said, looking directly at her with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I trust you had an enjoyable weekend? I know you had an interesting Friday night." The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Susan from operations looked like she'd been slapped. Paul from HR suddenly became fascinated by his notepad. Miss Rios, I'm not sure what you mean," Isabel stammered. "Oh, I think you do," I said, keeping my tone light. "The Azure Tower Gala, the one where you were so generous." I reached into my pocket, pulled out the crumpled dollar bill, unfolded it, and slid it across the polished table. It spun once and came to rest directly in front of her portfolio. "I believe this is yours." Isabel stared at the dollar bill like it was a live snake. The silence in the room was so thick you could have cut it with a plasma torch. "I don't. Let me help you out," I said, leaning back in my chair. "That's the dollar bill you threw at me. Your boss, the owner of this company, while making a joke about taking good care of my husband. Remember now?" Paul from HR made a small gasping noise. Susan covered her mouth. "Miss Rios." Isabel tried again, her voice desperate. It was a misunderstanding. A terrible joke. I didn't mean." "Please don't," I interrupted. "What I'm interested in now is professional conduct." I opened the black folder. "I'm also interested in this LLC you opened 6 months ago. Vanguard Industrial Design, LLC. A fascinating name choice. Almost identical to your employer's. Her face went from white to red. She knew. And I'm very interested, I continued, in the $52,000 in consulting fees you've been billing to my husband, Martin Rios, which he has been paying for using my company's American Express card. I looked around the table. That's what we in the business world call embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy. All fireable offenses. Paul from HR looked like he was going to be sick. Yes, Miss Rios? Dr. Vance is fired, effective immediately. Conduct unbecoming, gross misconduct, and suspicion of felony fraud. You can clean out your desk. You will be escorted by security. Your final paycheck will be held, pending a full audit and likely criminal charges. If you try to file for wrongful termination, my lawyers will be thrilled to discuss your pattern of theft and racketeering in open court. You can't, she shrieked, her corporate mask completely gone. I absolutely can, and it absolutely is. I nodded to Maria, who was standing by the door. Paul, can you call security to escort Dr. Vance to her office and then off the premises? Already texted them, Paul said, his hands shaking as he typed. They'll be here in 2 minutes. We sat in that horrible, beautiful silence. Isabel just sat there, broken, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. Security arrived, 2 large men I didn't recognize, and escorted her out, her crying, "This is harassment, you'll hear from my lawyer." I didn't care. I went back to my studio, had another coffee, and waited. It came 3 hours later. A frantic, screaming voicemail from Martin, who had clearly just gotten the call from Isabel. Elena! What the hell did you do? You fired her? You can't just fire her. She's going to sue. You've ruined everything. You didn't tell me you owned her company. You said you just made statues. You have to fix this. I listened to the message twice, savoring the panic. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer, Julia Stone, with a simple message. Add this to the file. Then I blocked his number and went back to welding. The week between Isabel's firing and our first court date was a masterclass in watching someone's carefully constructed life implode. Martin tried calling me from 30 different numbers. He sent emails that ranged from apologetic, "I made a terrible mistake," to furious, "You're being vindictive and destroying this family," to desperate, "Think about the kids. Elena." I forwarded every single one to Julia. He tried using the kids as messengers, which was the lowest blow. He called Leo, who shut him down immediately. "Dad, stop. You made this mess, don't put me in it." He tried the twins. Sophia, my practical engineer, sent him a link to a therapist's website. Mateo, my crypto bro, apparently just told him, "Bad trade, old man. You shorted your own life." I had to pretend to be stern about that one. Luna, my baby, was the hardest. She was confused and hurt. "Why is Daddy so angry at you? He said you were being mean." I sat her down and explained it as gently as I could. Daddy made some bad choices with an adult friend. He broke the rules of our family, and I have to be the one to enforce the rules, even if it's hard. I got her into therapy with a child psychologist that same week. Watching my daughter struggle was worse than any price tag. The day of the hearing arrived with the gray chill of a root canal. I wore a new suit, a charcoal gray wool that I'd bought specifically for this. My court suit. Julia met me at the courthouse steps, sharp in navy blue and carrying a briefcase that looked like it could stop a bullet. "Remember," she said. "Stay calm. Answer directly. Let him be the emotional one. We have the receipts. All we have to do is show them." The courtroom was smaller than I expected, all wood paneling and fluorescent lights. Judge Catherine Morrison presided, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, and an expression that said she'd heard every lie in the book and wasn't impressed. Martin sat on the other side with his lawyer Robert, looking tired and wronged, playing the victim. He wouldn't look at me. Robert started strong. He painted a picture of Martin as the supportive husband who'd endured years of emotional neglect, while I focused on my metalworking hobby instead of our marriage. He claimed I was vindictive and controlling, that I'd publicly humiliated Martin by locking him out, and then abused my power as an employer to harass and fire Dr. Vance simply out of spite. This is a woman who values revenge over reconciliation, Your Honor, Robert finished, gesturing dramatically. Judge Morrison looked at me over her glasses. Miss Rios, would you like to respond? Yes, Your Honor, I said, my voice level. I'd like to address the public humiliation. My husband humiliated himself when he spent the night in a hotel with another woman and came home wearing her mark on his neck. I didn't humiliate him. I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening. I heard a snort from the back row. Leo had insisted on coming. As for the locks, I continued, I changed them after discovering my husband was having an affair. That's not vindictive. It's self-preservation. And regarding Dr. Vance's termination, she was fired for cause. She was an executive at my company who publicly insulted me, her CEO, and was actively involved in an affair with my husband, which was being funded by money embezzled from my business account. That's not spite, Your Honor. That's just good governance. Objection! Robert yelled. Embezzlement. That's a wild, unsubstantiated accusation. Is it? Julia stood up, smooth as silk, holding a thick, spiral-bound binder. If it pleases the court, Your Honor, we have the substantiation. She laid it out for the judge. Every statement. Every hotel charge. The $1,200 for lingerie. The $2,000 for jewelry. The transfers to Isabel's Shell LLC. The judge read, her expression going from neutral to annoyed to actively angry. She looked up at Martin. Mr. Rios, can you explain why you charged $52,480 to your wife's business account over a 6-month period, including 11 stays at the Azure Tower Hotel, and multiple cash transfers to an LLC owned by Dr. Isabel Vance? Martin's face was ashen. He looked at his lawyer in panic. Your Honor, Robert stammered, those were marital funds. My client had authorization to spend $50,000 on hotels and lingerie, counsel? The judge's voice was dangerously quiet. And Dr. Vance? Was she aware that Miss Rios was her employer at the time of this affair? Martin was silent. Robert was silent. I'll take that as a yes, Judge Morrison said. Counselor, your client didn't just have an affair. He stole nearly $53,000 from his wife's business to fund it. He's not getting rewarded for that. The verdict was swift. It was a demolition. I was awarded the house, full ownership, no buyout. I was awarded my business, Rios Design Studio and its subsidiary Vanguard, 100% free and clear. I was awarded full legal custody of the children. Martin was ordered to repay the $52,480 he'd stolen, plus my legal fees. And as for Mr. Rios's assets, the judge said, he will retain his personal belongings, his golf clubs, and his Tesla, which I see here carries a significant loan. Leo's laugh echoed in the courtroom. I didn't even try to hide my smile. We walked out of that courthouse into the bright December sunshine. Mom, Leo said, giving me a high five. That was better than any movie I've ever seen. Justice usually is, I said, feeling lighter than I had in a decade. News travels fast in Austin. But news about a high-flying venture capitalist and his tech exec mistress getting legally and financially demolished by the blue-collar artisan wife they'd publicly humiliated? That spread through the tech and art communities like wildfire in a dry canyon. I first realized I'd become some kind of local legend when I got a call 3 days after the court hearing. Is this Miss Elena Rios? The voice was sharp, powerful, and unfamiliar. This is she. This is Cynthia Meyer. I'm the lead architect on the new Oracle campus expansion. I've always admired your work, Miss Rios, but my colleague just forwarded me an article from a local business journal about your court case. There was a pause. I want one of your pieces for our main lobby. I want something massive, something made of steel and grit, and I want it to be a testament to integrity. Our budget is significant. That was the first domino. By the end of the week, my studio manager, Maria, was pale. Elena, what the hell happened in that courtroom? I've had to hire a temporary assistant just to answer the phone. We have 3 new corporate commissions, 7 private requests, and a gallery in Houston wants to do an entire feature on your work. Our order backlog just went from 3 months to 18. She grinned. Your business has literally tripled in 72 hours. We're going to need to hire more welders. The irony wasn't lost on me. Martin had always been embarrassed that I worked with my hands, that I got dirty, that I just made sculptures. Now that hobby was getting press in Forbes and Art Daily, not for the art itself, but for the story behind the artist. I was the woman who built things that lasted, while his world of abstract value and brittle promises had shattered. Martin himself was silent. His reputation in the tight-knit Austin VC community was, as Julia Stone put it, utterly torched. No one wants to invest with a man who is not only a cheater, but stupid enough to get caught embezzling from his own wife. Isabel Vance had simply vanished. Rumor was she'd fled back to California, facing not only my civil suit for the $52,480, but a potential criminal investigation for fraud. The real shift, however, happened in my studio. It was 2 a.m., my traditional time for emotional processing, the scent of ozone and hot steel in the air. I was working, letting the bright arc of the welder consume my thoughts. I looked at the raw, unbending I-beams leaning against the wall, at the solid, heavy beauty of the steel. Martin and Isabel valued things that were sleek, polished, and hollow. I valued things that were strong, real, and had substance. That's when inspiration hit. I grabbed my sketchbook, my hands still dirty, and started drawing. A new product line. Not just one-off commissions, but a series. Premium, top-of-the-line sculptures. Built with the best materials. Corten steel, marine-grade stainless, hand-blown glass. We'd call it the Integrity Collection. The next morning, I called Leo into my office. He'd taken a gap year before trade school and was working for me, discovering he had a natural talent for CAD design and social media. I've got an idea, I said, showing him the sketches. The Integrity Collection. Leo looked at the designs, then at me, and started grinning. Mom, that's savage. I love it. What's the angle? The angle, I said, is that each one comes with a small, custom-engraved plaque. Tasteful, but visible. I showed him the mock-up. It just said, "Built to last." He burst out laughing. That's it. That's the whole campaign. Relationships might fail, but true craftsmanship lasts forever. Mom, you're a genius. Within a week, Leo had created an entire marketing campaign. He shot videos of me in the studio, sparks flying, my face set in concentration. He didn't mention the divorce. He didn't have to. The subtext did all the heavy lifting. The Integrity Collection, marketed to people who value substance over style, sold out its first run before we'd even finished fabricating the first piece. The other kids had their own ways of processing. Sophia, my little engineer, had created a complex spreadsheet that detailed Martin's projected financial gains from the divorce versus his actual net loss, concluding that his affair was a catastrophic failure in risk assessment. Mateo, my crypto kid, just shook his head. He paper-handed his entire family for a depreciating asset, Mom. Bad trade, but Hazel. Luna had been the hardest. My 2-year-old was sensitive. The therapy with Dr. Chen was expensive, but it was worth every penny. Last week, Luna had come home and found me in the studio, sketching. She climbed up on my workbench, a place she knew was reserved for work, and sat there, watching me draw. Dr. Chen says I should tell you how I feel, she said finally, her small voice cutting through the silence. I put down my pencil and gave her my full attention. Okay, how do you feel? Sad that Dad made bad choices, she said, choosing her words carefully. Angry that he broke our family, but... She paused. I'm proud of you. Proud of me? Yeah. Dr. Chen says you handled it right, that you didn't yell or scream or say bad things about Dad, even though you could have. That you protected us. She says not all moms do that. Some moms just break. She looked at me with those serious 2-year-old eyes. But you don't break, Mom. You're like your sculptures. I felt something in my chest that had been clenched tight for months, finally release. I pulled her into a hug, burying my face in her hair, smelling the faint scent of kid shampoo and sunshine. I'm trying, sweetheart. I'm just trying. You're doing good, Mom, she whispered. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, I walked into my office. I took the crumpled dollar bill that Isabel Vance had given me, the one I'd kept on my desk as a reminder, and I smoothed it out. I placed it in a simple, elegant black frame. I hung it on the wall right above my desk, where I would see it every morning. It was a reminder, not of an insult, but of a price. The price of underestimating the woman who builds things that last.